the historic center of Florence is an open-air museum. It's a marvel of architecture with buildings and artworks of incalculable value. You can even see a copy of Michelangelo's David in the middle of a square. Dante Alighieri was born here, and Leonardo da Vinci lived and worked in the city. It's not without reason that Florence was a symbol of the Renaissance. There's so much happening in Florence that it's easy to overlook some of its history, like a church demolished 240 years ago, whose presence can still be noticed. The San Pier Maggiore was located here, in the square that now carries its name. It doesn't exist anymore, but it's been rebuilt digitally.
Probably most people going to Florence won't have heard of this church of San Pier Maggiore. It's disappeared now. But it was an important building. It was full of artworks, which are now spread around different collections around Europe, North America.
This is Professor Donald Cooper, a historian from the University of Cambridge in the United Kingdom. After 5 years of research, he and colleagues from the University of Exeter developed an app that brought the San Pier Maggiore back to life. Florentines built the church in the years around 1300. It was about 45 meters long, with 25 separate altars and chapels, and each one of those had a painting over them. Now, anyone with a smartphone or a tablet can visit the church without leaving their houses through a super realistic 3D model of the building. But why was the church demolished in the first place?
There's an official version and a version which we can piece together unofficially. The official reason was that the church was unstable, it had structural problems, and it was going to cost a lot to repair. Probably the real reason was that the Florentine government of the time, this was before Italian unification, saw an opportunity to shut down a religious house, a community of nuns, that was also a prime piece of real estate in central Florence, and to redevelop the area for residential and commercial use. That seems to be the real reason. It was shut down in very good order. It meant all of the archives still survive. The paintings were given back to their original owners, the families that had commissioned them in many cases. So it was done in a very ordered fashion, but that was almost certainly the reason to develop the area as a market.
The San Pier Maggiore underwent several transformations during the Renaissance, when he gained the portico on the facade, creating the arches that still exist today. Even though it cannot be compared to other Florentine churches, like the Basilica of Santa Croce, the burial place of Michelangelo, Machiavelli and Galileo, the San Pier Maggiore had relevant paintings in it, like the Coronation of the Virgin by Jacopo di Cione, the church's altarpiece that is now in London's National Gallery. It also housed Francesco Botticini's Assumption of the Virgin. Most of the building was demolished in 1784. The chapels became shops and later apartments, but the church never completely disappeared.
And if you go to use the bathroom, you'll find a Renaissance pilaster from a chapel, which has never changed location. It's just what was once a chapel is now a bathroom. And so on and so forth. There are bits of stonework in someone's kitchen, or a bell tower in someone's attic. This is the kind of thing that survives.
Because of the vast documentation available in Florence's archives and representations of the church in historical paintings, the researchers had a solid database to model the San Pier Maggiore digitally. But the help of locals was crucial to identify many parts of the original building.
There was a lot of detective work on the ground. We used digital scanning technology, which was very helpful in terms of getting the measurements of the original building, working out how the structures there today relate to the historic structures. And actually, we had a great deal of help from the local residents, the local community. We had great allies, for instance, in the local bar or cafe. Sounds, strange, a strange way to conduct academic research, but in fact, we were given tremendous help. Put in touch with people who had fragments in their apartments, and then we were very graciously allowed to see those and to record them. So this was actually a really central part of the research, and it meant it was a very collaborative exercise, also with local residents, business owners, proprietors. So a very unconventional kind of research as well. Sometimes people are aware of these historic surroundings. In some cases, residents who've been restoring their apartments or workplaces have kind of found these fragments and decided to leave them visible, and that of course is an enormous help to us. Sometimes they're hidden, and sometimes people we found were really very moved to discover that their shop, for instance, was originally a chapel with a really important painting that's now in the National Gallery in London.
The researchers are working on an updated version of the 3D model that could include more of the church's original paintings. The app also uses virtual reality to connect the San Pier Maggiore with the National Gallery in London, where some of its artworks are kept. For visitors in Florence, the app lines up the model with the street, revealing the structure of the church amongst the present-day buildings of the city. At the National Gallery in London, visitors using the app near the coronation of the Virgin will see the museum walls turning into the interior of the San Pier Maggiore.
We started this, of course, several years ago, but it feels like it's becoming more important with everything we're experiencing at the moment, with the lockdown and the reduced access, reduced mobility, reduced access to art collections. I think it's inevitable that the digital is going to become more important for interpretation. At the same time, the direct access to the artwork itself is going to become much more precious and intense.
Cooper hopes the app will stimulate sustainable tourism in cities like Venice and Florence, where flocks of visitors on the streets are now part of the landscape. Over 15 million people spent at least one night in the metropolitan area of Florence in 2019. This is almost 40 times the population of the city. Long queues, crowded streets, pressure on the public transport, and degradation of the city have become major problems for the locals.
The lockdown in Florence was obviously very hard in many aspects for the city, as it's been everywhere else. But it did also allow Florentines to experience their city in a different way, empty, effectively. And I think that's had the effect that a lot of people now in the city don't necessarily just want to go back to how things were, the kind of model of mass tourism, queuing up to see certain key artworks, huge bottlenecks of tourists and visitors. I think there's a kind of desire to perhaps reach for a different kind of model, a kind of a more informed, diverse tourism where perhaps there's much more to see and say about areas of the city which haven't traditionally received many visitors. And that's something where digital vehicles of interpretation like this can perhaps make a small contribution. But I think there's something very powerful here, and also much more engaging for people, where if you take the artwork in the gallery and sort of take it down from its pedestal, it allows people to engage with it and to approach it in much more readily. You know, you can now go to Florence and visit that bar and see a bit of the church in the Louvre and know what it is. And that kind of immediacy, I think, with the past it really helps to break down barriers.
If you're interested in downloading the app, the link is in the description below. If you like this video, please consider subscribing to the channel. You can also support Sonder on Patreon. Our Patreon account is linked below.